Is there anything better than a mad old car that's been turbocharged and now better than it ever was?
Brought into the future with modifications. When we first did this car, we had some pretty high-tech stuff on there. Time has moved on and the stuff has got even more high-tech and even better, and that is what we're throwing at this car to make it even better to drive.
Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. Of course, this episode we are working on, I would say, one of the best and most iconic cars of all time. The car that gave Porsche a run for its money. Back in the day, these cost less and they were faster, and now they cost more. And maybe they're slower. Is that how that works,
That's
Martin?
kind of how it works, but it has become a bit of a classic. We've updated this with an RB26 out of a Nissan Skyline GTR, an R33. It's got a gearbox out of a
GDR, Martin.
R34 GTT, rear-wheel drive gearbox.
GDR.
A diff, it's got suspension work. We did a whole series of videos on it. If you haven't seen them, check it out. It's in a playlist, you can have a look. But this car has been very tastefully modified with the help of some excellent friends of ours, including one that's here with us today, and that's Alan. Absolute legend, and we are continuing the work on this car.
If you swing around the camera right now and just have a look behind you, look at that legend. There he is.
Just going for it.
That is Al, a long-time friend of the show, an absolute legend, a turbo whisperer, you could say. Today, we got big things happening. By the end of this video, everything will be back in here and the car will be started and running. Mark my words. Today, we have got to do a new dump pipe. The turbo's going on. We're doing ITBs by wire, Mark.
Yes, drive-by-wire ITBs using a mix and match of Nissan's original ITBs that were always on GTRs to get that drivability down low, but also with a really nice new plenum that sort of brings it into current day. And then we've got to match that back up to our original intercooler, as well as the new turbo, which is on there, which also has to be matched to the intercooler, and that turbo also needs a new dump pipe. So we've got a fair bit of fabrication, not going completely back to basics, but we have to redo quite a bit of stuff.
We're starting, though, on the engine. What are we doing first, Martin? Are we doing the turbo side first?
Yeah, turbo's going to go on, manifold's going to go on. We're going to sort of get the engine dressed and ready, and then once we've done that, look at dumping it back in.
The RB26 comes from the Nissan factory as a twin-turbo inline 6-cylinder engine. And being most well known as the power plant of the infamous GTR series of cars, this decades-old engine has become iconic with almost godlike status among lovers of Japanese cars. The RB26 DETT is known for its twin turbos, yet we've dropped a T to go single turbo, a very common practice, but still one met with controversy in some circles. But with huge advancements in turbo technology, there's actually not much of a case for the more complicated twin-turbo setups. While a lot of people on fan groups and comment sections prefer the purity of twin-turbos, people that are building these cars, racing them and pushing them to their limits are going single-turbo just like we are doing here, with the Garrett G-Series G30 660. This features the latest innovations in modern turbocharging for maximum efficiency and horsepower, a ceramic ball bearing cartridge, reverse rotation configuration, and used for engine displacements between 2 litres and 3.5 litres. The truth is that time has marched on, and sometimes this engine can be stuck in a kind of exaggerated nostalgia that doesn't truly represent its modern day capabilities. In fact, if you put a stock R32 GTR up against a modern hot hatch, I think it would struggle to keep up. But we should not underestimate the potential of these engines because the aftermarket for them is absolutely massive, and there are loads of people making over 1,000 horsepower using a built bottom end with stock crank and achieving quarter-mile times in the low 8 seconds. So yes, there is absolutely huge potential, and yes, it will be faster than a Golf GTI, but our main focus here is a car that's drivable on the street while still making really good power. And one of the ways that we can work towards that is something that also is revered amongst all internet circles absolutely everywhere, and that is the installation of individual throttle bodies. This here is the inlet manifold that came from Nissan originally on the RB engine, and as you can see, there is a whole lot going on. It is very, very complex. So when we built this car originally 6 years ago, we went from that to a simpler system over here with a big single throttle, which is drive-by-wire. But now we're evolving and kind of putting both of them together with this system, which we got from Plazmaman and Dahtone Racing. And basically, we're going back to 6 individual throttles, but making them drive-by-wire.
with a smaller, more compact plenum.
So we're chasing throttle response basically. So individual throttles are basically only there for throttle response. It does complicate things from a tuning perspective, but that's where you get that. What they originally were going for was a very responsive engine but then it also was assisted with a lot of boost pressure. So this here is built for drag racing. It's just matched to a giant turbo that comes on boost at 6,000 RPM, maximum power. So obviously that isn't really suitable for our application, but at the time we're limited in what we could get that would fit in the car because this wouldn't.
Yes.
Because it's quite a bit larger in the plenum size.
But this is maximum power at the expense of drivability.
100%, yeah.
Yep.
You don't need drivability when you're drag racing. You just need it to go. So this is going to be the best of both worlds, I guess. It's compact. It's a lot simpler, even though these are actually those throttles. They're genuine Nissan ones that have been reconditioned with some vapor blasting and whatnot by the looks of it. It's very simple because there's no return springs, nothing like that anymore.
And look at this side.
Yes. See, this is all your idle control things, and yeah, it's super complicated back in the day. So this and an ECU that's got brains like the Haltech replaces all that and does a much better job of it. So this is just going to go all together as per instructions, and then we'll see what's required to fit it on. We may leave it off the engine to put it back in because it's very easy to scratch some nice new things if we put it on, but we'll see. Get stuck in it. I think I'm ready on my end to put the engine back in the car.
We're ready.
Yep.
Let's put the engine in the car.
This is another great example of acknowledging the history of this engine while dragging it into the current era and getting rid of a lot of the complexity of this original setup. We can now do the final preparations to get the engine back into the 240Z. And speaking of engines, there is some argument online about what RB26DETT stands for. Now, some people think it's race bred, but that's just a sandwich that you eat really fast. RB denotes the engine class family, 26 refers to the 2.6 litre displacement, D is for the dual overhead crankshaft, E is for elephant, and TT is the twin turbos, even though we've thrown them in the bin where they belong, so now our engine is just T, the way it should be. Anyway, now it's time to carefully lower this beautiful creation back into the eagerly awaiting engine bay of the 240Z. But after a lot of jiggling, manoeuvring, and scratching of heads, we've realised that we've run into a problem. It doesn't fit. So we've just made it up the engine with the gearbox, but the situation that we're in currently is that the new sump is touching on the steering rack. Obviously the back end of it is better because it's not as low as before, but then it looks like there's a bit more meat on the front of it. So Al, what do we add or remove? I gather we add something to the engine.
Yeah,
now,
well,
add some length.
We'll either space them or we'll do something. We'll probably just get underneath and have a roam around and have a look. It's obviously tipped right over now, which it shouldn't be. So it doesn't really matter in this case because we are changing just about every pipe that connects to the engine that isn't flexible. So as long as we get this mounted right, it'll be fine. We'll just remake to suit.
When we originally installed this engine, we had to consider where it sat in relation to the gearbox, the front crossmember, and a bunch of other things. Now that we have this low profile sump, it's once again changed the game. It's going to make everything work better and importantly prevent our sump being best friends with a speed hump, but we're going to have to remount the engine in a slightly different position. Using the same technique as last time, Al is adapting the mounting points on the engine to the mounting points on the chassis rails using some steel tube. By incorporating the original factory mounts, which are rubber, it keeps noise and vibration to a minimum. Now you can buy engine mount kits that help with this process if you're doing it for the first time, and they come with the steel, the rubber bushes, and the required bolts to make it work. Holding the engine in the right spot is one of the trickiest parts of an engine conversion, but it is totally worth it. And with some cardboard, a marker, some steel tube, a welder and a grinder, and maybe some paint, you can make your own engine mounts to mount whatever engine you want in whatever car takes your fancy.
The engine is back in the car, and Al has done some wizardry to make it fit again. Because of the proximity of the new sump to the steering rack, some adjustments had to be made, and Al made them by melting metal with his wand.
That's what happened. The melting process was quite simple. We just welded some stuff, but prior to that, just cut up some plates and stuff and recycled some bits. And we just had, the engine has just been moved a little bit from where it was when we put it in many years ago. So I think we might have put it where we put it because the other turbo definitely wouldn't have fitted there anymore. So that's fortunate that we have a fresh turbo setup. So otherwise I can't remember, it was too long ago and I'm old.
Amazing. And so now it's a good feeling to have it back in here. This is looking fantastic. So now we'll just move on to the intake side and assemble all of that, which is a little bit of fendanglery, isn't it? Yeah,
well, I've obviously never done it before, so I'll have to take my time and work my way through it. I'll just reconnect all the wiring because most of it is unchanged. Just that throttle body's moved. So we'll reconnect everything. I'll re-terminate a new plug for the new throttle, and then we'll move on to connecting everything else. And otherwise it's just bolting things in and then making obviously some new pipes, which we'll get to.
Al, it's amazing to have you here. Thank you very much.
It's time to install our Dahtone Racing ITB drive-by-wire system. Now, part of the unique sound, performance and character of an RB26 came from the factory-fitted independent throttle bodies, where each cylinder gets its own throttle blade. They're joined by a mechanical connection and then together opened by a mechanical cable connected to the accelerator pedal. That determines how much air gets in. Then the old school ECU would measure the air, add fuel via injectors, and the whole lot would go bang in a kind of disappointing manner, but you'd still chop a WRX. The 240Z also used a cable throttle, but that's all being brought into the current Century with a drive-by-wire system. The throttle pedal is a potentiometer that outputs a voltage based on how hard you smash it with your naked foot. The ECU then reads this signal and opens the throttle, or in our case, multiple throttles, based on a table that we'll add when tuning the car. This means that the ECU can get involved with the relationship between accelerator pedal and throttle opening when it comes to control of power and delivery. And as a bonus, it can also be used for idle control, cruise control, and even traction control, meaning we can delete a whole bunch of 90s era scrapoo. It can also make the car drive smoother, or you could create a valet mode where the throttle may be limited to 20 or 30%, perfect for when I lend the car to Marty. Another application may be a wet weather mode, similar to modern motorcycles, and with 330 kilowatts at the wheels, it means we can activate a secondary state which cuts the throttle by 50%, making the car safer to drive in slippery conditions. This will all need to be calibrated in the Haltech once we're on the dyno to get the best pedal feel, and is another example of bringing this awesome retro car into the current day and age. And if you want to convert your car that still uses a cable, apparently you can pilfer some parts from the Honda bin, which has a box that converts the pedal cable to a signal that goes into the ECU. A big thanks to Tuning Fork for that nugget of wisdom, and we'll be seeing him soon on the dyno. All of the pipework has been coming together absolutely fantastically, and we're one step closer to getting this thing on the road.
So the inlet manifold is now all on and it's looking fantastic. The turbo's on. The next job is to try and integrate some of the existing components of piping that we have, because the front mount is staying, with the new setup, which I think will involve me blowing holes in aluminium pipe.
Got to start somewhere. So the original setup was we had like Wiggins style clamps on it, so clamshell clamps, so no silicon, but this new manifold just uses a slip-on connection and it's all powder coated and everything, so we're not going to mess with that. So we're just going to go back to silicon, keep these Wiggins style clamps on the intercooler because they're already there, and so we're just cutting off the bits that were originally there and adding new pieces to line up. So it's pretty straightforward.
Cool. Silicon gives you some latitude for some kind of adjustment as well, right? That you wouldn't normally get because everything has to be perfect, whereas this does give you some movement.
The Wiggins clamps do have movement in them, but it's definitely a lot more fine-tuned than especially a 90-degree silicon bend. You don't need the Wiggins style clamps there for like massive pressure. Like a silicon will hold on at 50 psi if it's put together right. So it's not really necessary, it's just cool.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll blow some holes through some aluminium and then you can fix it.
Okay.
Getting some wisdom from the wisest man I know in automotive is actually pretty special, and he's an excellent teacher, even if I'm a fairly remedial student. but the opportunity to weld in front of one of the masters is both a delight and a fright. But I'm getting a couple of nods, so it's a good start. The pipework is finished, which means we can connect up our original front mount intercooler from version 1 of this build, and then it's time for the radiator to go back in. We're installing a GFB EX44 external wastegate because our original setup already had an external gate, so we're updating it with one of these. These are proudly made right here in Australia by GFB, who've been sponsors of Mighty Car Mods for over 10 years. Next up, our coolant's going in, and then it's time for a brand new oil filter and a fresh serving of Castrol Edge, Supercar Edition. And now it's time to move on to what I promised at the start of this video. We're connecting to the ECU for a final setup, and then we're going to fill it with fresh fuel and turn the key to see if we can get it started.
We spent a little bit of time with the laptop. We actually upgraded that Haltech Elite to the latest Haltech software. The updates are free, so we're on the newest software. It uses the newest tuning software on here. We have turned the injectors off, put fresh fuel in the tank. So now we're going to crank it to make sure we've got oil pressure, because we have messed with the oiling system, the sump and all that, to make sure the oil pressure comes up. And if that works, we'll try and start it. Shall we?
Yep.
Give it a crank.
All right, we got oil pressure, so now we're going to start it. It's obviously going to be really loud because we don't have an exhaust yet, but let's see if it goes. Let's hit it.
No go.
Coils are plugged in, eh?
Might not have enough throttle.
Yeah, it works.
All right.
Okay, so we've just brought down all our idle control because we hadn't touched the map, which means it still thinks it's controlling this massive throttle, which you need a big opening. Now that we've got all those throttles, we don't need to open it so far. So we've brought it down from like a minimum idle of 20% open to like 5, and I think that's going to be better. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds fat. Awesome. Good one. Thanks, Al.
It's going to be so good. Thanks, Alan.
You're welcome.
It sounds snappy. It's going to be so good, dude. Like being able to drift that and like correct it like mid-corner, instead of like, death.
Here's Alan.
Good on you, Al.
He gets his cuddle. See you, mate. Awesome seeing you as always.
Mad dog.
Thanks for coming down.
Hey.
Very happy.
See, maybe for the first time in Mighty Car Mods history, I promised it would start today, and it started.
And
good job, Martin.
Lucky I was here, hey?
Well, and lucky Al was here.
And Al, of course.
Our good mate.
He's exceptionally talented, and it was really nice to have him here to hang out and have a good time, but also do RB26 things.
So it's actually in there, a little bit smoky. That's just it running itself in. There's still obviously so much to do. In fact, this is just the beginning. And what I'm very excited about is we've got a little factory right now in Japan making some stuff, which we're hoping is going to be here soon.
It's a pretty big factory.
And it's pretty big stuff,
Yeah.
actually. So that's pretty exciting. And of course, if you haven't grabbed yours yet, we've got the limited time only 240Z signed posters. We will ship these to you anywhere in the world. Marty and I will individually autograph your poster. There's a little thing coming up now, so grab yours. Start your collection or add to your existing collection. Martin, I don't even want to talk about what's happening next time because we've got more special guests. We've got more parts coming in overnight from Japan that took 6 months and other exciting things.
Let's do it.
And we need an exhaust, don't we?
Oh yeah, we need an exhaust. We'll do that as well.
And so many
And
things.
probably a list about this long.
Martin, well, it's a list, wait on, it's a list around about that long. All right, see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks again to Al for coming down. We hope you're enjoying this series. Grab yourself a poster and see you next time on Mighty Car Mods.